This is Trav Ramon, host of the By Any Means podcast, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics. Prepare for the revolution. We have cookies.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us again tonight. It's been an amazing journey throughout this merry week. Anyway, we're coming at you with a new episode 103. And we talked a little bit last week after our Halloween episode about doing a little bit more serious of an episode. So tonight, a lot of the topics that we have for everybody is a little bit more serious. We're going to be talking about Catalonia's cheap nationalism. We're going to be talking about the Catalonia, whatever, Catalina. They're probably both dressings. I'm going to guess that. No, they're not dressings.
I thought you were going to call it the cantina, like the can.
Like
I thought
in
you were
Star
call
Wars.
It the cantina bar from Star Wars.
Well, that's kind of a fair one. You know, maybe I would call it that. And then we're going to be talking about domestic violence. We have a very personal story from Mel Rice, operations manager over at Normalized Atheism, and she also runs a secular domestic violence awareness blog and website as well. And then we're going to end the episode talking about the economics of consent. Yes, we're going to be talking about Harvey Weinstein and the economics of consent and how basically just by calling people out doesn't mean that it's going to make everything better. And we're going to kind of be able to relate it to different stories within my work, as well as kind of be able to address this inside of a larger society. But before we get too far, let me introduce and bring back our most favoritist co-hostess with the mostest, Mr. Christopher Hanna. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm still deaf.
You're still deaf.
I don't know. I still can't hear where the damn, but I don't know. It's been a crazy week. A lot of wild things going on. Doing a whole bunch of work around my house and stuff. I had a full day off today, and I think I planted my hammer in the garden. I think I'm gonna have a hammer plant growing. I can't find the damn thing anywhere. So I don't know, it's been an interesting day off. Yeah, it's just whatever. And reading about all the crazy stuff. There was another shooting today in Texas, and just the world just never just chills. It's never just calm. And this week is a great example of all the stuff that, especially the sex scandals and everything that's been going on. It's just along for the ride, man.
Well, cool. And I have purchased a used new mic. I wanted to kind of have a backup mic in case we ever had guests in our studio, air quotes, at the house. And so I purchased another mic online. It's actually kind of funny. I went over there tonight to pick it up, and the guy gave me a really good deal. I have no clue how good this microphone is personally. All I know is that it's definitely a condenser mic. He sold it to me for 50% of what it was worth, and I needed a second backup mic at the house so that way I could have, guests and stuff like that over and not have to worry about trying to share a mic. Because even though my Blue Yeti technically allows me to share the mic with other people, it's really awkward. Like, we both have to get real close to the mic, and it's like we're both kissing dolphins or something like that.
I remember when we did the show with our acquaintance John Nelson way back over in your old house. You guys were both on the same mic, and it was almost like you were in a band singing a duet to each other. it was a pretty warm and fuzzy feeling. But no, we'll see how the new equipment works out. If you've got if your voice goes crazy or wacky or something, I'll make sure to stop you. Or if you just disappear, then I'll start talking science until you hook up your new mic or your old new your used other mic, whatever the heck you want to call that one now.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
So how about this though, Hannah? So we talked about the audio, right? But does the Cantalinas or Cantonio situation, does that make you feel warm and fuzzy too?
Kind of. It's almost a validation in some of my suspicions for a lot of the nationalist pride that we hear growing all over the world. Catalonia's independence, and all these people have been saying that they want to break free and start their own little sovereign state in Spain. It's kind of going to the kaputs.
So why is that though? Okay, so give everybody a little
thing.
Background, Hannah. I mean, because I'll be honest, I don't come to this knowing a whole ton about it. I've seen some posts about it in the past, right? And I knew there was a big struggle, and I knew there was a lot of civil unrest when it came to what was happening, when they had their elections, because they had full armored police there. People were taking pictures of them getting dragged away. And so tell us your take on what the Catalonia's issue is.
All right, so the Catalonians, the Catalonians, or the Catalans, they basically had a referendum, just like European Union referendum in Britain, where they decided to leave the European Union. That's just a full-on referendum. So everybody in the country gets to vote, a plebiscite, and they basically decided that they wanted to leave Spain. They wanted to start their own country. They wanted to be completely separated from the Spanish government. And one of the reasons why they wanted to do this is because the Catalan area, the province, the region, is one of the richer and more affluent parts of Spain. And they don't like the fact that a lot of their taxes are basically it's funneling money from that region to the poorer and more destitute areas. I don't know how destitute they are, but like the poorer and more rural areas of Spain that they don't want to get their money. So essentially they're having a problem with this redistribution of wealth and helping your fellow citizens, and you're helping your the socialist ideal. So this is kind of like a soft nationalist thing, because it's not really that rooted in any kind of race or battling. It's more just an economic thing where these people just don't want to give up their money. It's kind of greed based. And they had a referendum, and the majority of people did not come out and vote. So a lot of people just said, no, I'm not going to vote. And one of the reasons why is because the Spanish government said, if you do hold this election, we're going to arrest you. And they had like you said, an armed police presence preventing people from voting. But still enough people came out that, and obviously if you've got an armed police force protecting the polls and trying to shut things down, like that's going to put a lot of on the fencers or the moderates. They're not going to come out. So the only ones that are going to come out are going to be the hardcore, nationalists who really are fighting for this whole thing. So of course the vote went towards the nationalist side, and then they had to, I guess, approve the referendum in Parliament, or their version of it. And they said, yes, we want to secede. And so they voted. It was and so essentially the Catalan region said, we want to become our own sovereign state. And the Spanish said, if you vote that you want to become sovereign, we are taking over your entire government. We are firing every single person in leadership positions, and we will be in control of it. And so that's what happened. And all of the people, you hear this thing, it's the blood and soil, right? The nationalists, this is our land and this is where we fight to stay. Well, given the chance to fight, put some blood down in that soil, right? To fight for your lands. What did all the leaders do? They flee to Belgium. They're hiding there. It would be like if we had, a referendum in the United States and Texas wanted to secede or something, and it was run by alt-right guys, and then as soon as they did and they voted for it and the U.S. government went in to get them, they all flee to Mexico. That's like the equivalent.
That's true. Yeah, that's funny because if they all did go to Mexico, that would be awful. But so what were they fighting? Why did they want it wasn't just taxes? Is that literally all it was? It's just, we have taxes we don't want to pay because we don't feel we're getting a fair share of them. Is that all that it was? Or did they have like other reasons that, they were fighting against it?
Well, there's a lot of people that are kind of getting wrapped up into it. The Catalan president, the guy's name is Puigdemont. he basically is kind of like I cannot remember the name of the guy from England who was in charge. Boris something. Anyways, the guys that were in charge of that, like they were in charge, and once it started to become a real deal, once it said, okay, now we're actually going to leave the European Union, you're going to be our new prime minister or leader or whatever. The guy was like, oh crap, really? What? And he ran away. And then they ended up having to choose Theresa May to be the prime minister. The same kind of thing is happening here. Like the party itself and everybody, you know, has succeeded in this, and it's mixing a bunch of different things together. So there are some people who are probably in this strange nationalist position when it has to do with, you know, purity and keeping, you know, certain groups out. And then there's mostly the economic driver. And then in some cases, you know, there could just be something that people just, they could be like these uber libertarians who they don't want big government. They want to be separated from any kind of large thing and have it, you know, locally controlled only. And that, but they've all kind of coalesced together, and it's not a violent group. This isn't like a violent group of people who are out there rioting in the streets. This is, like I said, it's kind of like this soft version of what we see as like the alt-right nationalist ploy. They're relatively affluent, well-off people, and they've kind of all decided they just don't want to be part of that government anymore. And so it's a mixture of a bunch of different things. It's just the thing is like in the U.S. election, 47%, 46% of the people in the country didn't vote at all for the presidency. It's the same kind of thing there. Like almost 50% of the people in the country just didn't vote in this referendum. And so essentially a quarter of the country voted for a majority in that referendum to secede. And so a quarter of the country decided whether or not they wanted to become a new country or not. And so the day after they voted in their parliament and their government, there was a huge riot of hundreds of thousands of people that were like, no, we don't want to leave. And of, you know, people like you and I that would probably say, no, we don't want to secede. Michigan doesn't want to secede from the United States or whatever. And so there's been this, you know, there's dueling problems, and the Spanish government is now in charge over there. And
how about this though? So what if we lived in California?
The whole point of this entire thing for me is just that given that chance. Okay.
Well, what if you lived in California, Hannah? Think about it. If you live in California, right? They're a pretty liberal state, and we probably
they wanted to secede.
And they wanted to secede. Is it? Are you sure it's more close to the alt-right? Are you sure it's not? They're more, you know, leftists on that in Catalonia or whatever you want to call it.
No, and that's one of the other things that gives this a different perspective. So essentially, you have, you know, the entire nationalist perspective, and they're bringing this, but it also can go the other way. Is that, you know, let's say I was really pro secession for whatever region, group, state I'm in. And I thought the government was this big, bad, horrible thing. And in my position as a citizen of the United States, and I was really fighting to secede from the government, my argument is almost as valid from the other side as well, as long as it's for, you know, good reasons, as long as I have examples of why the government is really defrauding and really being bad. So like in California's case, like with the current administration, how trying to destroy EPA rulings and all these really great things that the Californians have done, the Catalans kind of feel the same way. It's like we have this great society, we've got a ton of money, we're doing really well, and you're taking what we have and giving it to people who they may have reasons. I don't know enough about the Catalan and the Spanish politics, if it's really got problems with corruption or not. If that's the case, then, you know, that strengthens the place, and it makes this a really gray, murky area. And that would be the case, like what you said there. It would be harder. So like, let's say a really great, you know, leftist, almost socialist state, so like California or Vermont, you know, decided they wanted to leave. The United States would react just as heavily and as authoritarian, like with its military forces, and would block the votes, would do the same kinds of things. So it kind of like where your perspective is, whether or not you think it's a good thing that they're going into secession. I just like to call out to the hypocrisy of saying that, you know, you want this nationalist pride, and then as soon as you're given the chance to fight for that land, you run away. But as far as agree with that, I mean,
I would agree with you on that one. You know, I mean, yeah, it's like, hey, you know, in that one article that you had from the Washington Times, you know, in it basically says, well, secession is the better option. You know, war sounds like the other option. But here now they're being presented with a chance to go to war, and they're saying, hold on a second. bye-bye, I'm going to run. And that kind of does seem, a little silly on their behalf. Now, in all fairness, if we actually kind of go back through the history, this isn't the first time, and I didn't know this until we started talking about this, but this isn't the first time they voted to secede. This is not like a brand new thing that just randomly came up this year or last year. This actually was on the ballot back in, I believe, either 2010 or 2012. Yeah, they did the same thing.
Kind of like Quebec.
They voted to secede. Yeah, it was 2012. The Catalonian Parliament election. Sovereignist parties supported a secession referendum, gathering 59% of the votes and held 87 of the 135 seats in the specific parliament. Parties supporting independence for the rest of Spain obtained 49% of the votes for a majority of 74. So this is not a new thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like with in Quebec, the French-speaking, French district of Canada. They've tried to do this a few times. Secession isn't a rare thing. There's a lot of times that these kinds of groupings happen where you have a really homogenous or a really homogenous group where they're very very well organized to the point where they're able to put together something that actually has some grassroots movement or whatever. In this case, it seems that they actually were able to pull off that final getting the votes in Parliament and actually being able to get the Prime Minister and everybody involved. So that's the thing here is the hypocrisy of the nationalist group running away is in and of itself funny. And just recently also the BBC News, they basically said that all these ex-officials have surrendered to Belgian police at the request of the Spanish government. So we'll be seeing any new developments that come through, because that was 11 hours ago they reported that from the BBC. We'll see if these people are held accountable or not, because potentially some of these cases, some of these people could look at years in prison. Obviously that probably won't happen, but there will be some examples made, is my guess. But when it comes to the secession for the the argument, if you can get enough people together and you go by the rules of the government, and the government just locks you down and slams you out like that is something that, if this was a really important thing for me, that I would feel like I was being oppressed and the big bad government, Big Brother, was blocking me. And so I kind of can understand their perspective a little bit. So the U.S. would do the same thing if the South tried to secede again. We would just send the military in and we would shut it down completely. And I'm kind of queasy at that kind of stuff. And I think the Spanish government could have done something better. I don't know what they could have done, but the way they reacted in such a top-down, strong-armed way, I think it strengthened the cause, and that was what was able to push them over into actually getting it voted and succeeding in the referendum.
Yeah. So really, there's a Telegraph article that actually talks about the only reason is money, is because they support their 20% of the economy. They have the highest GDP, or GDP out there. So it is just them saying, hey, we've got a lot of money, which kind of does go back to California. It'd be like if California said, hey, we make the most money, we pay the most taxes, therefore we're seceding and not going to donate to the rest of the United States. To me, it almost feels like, why would Spain come to the table, though, and say, okay, how can we help fix this, right? What's causing you guys to be the most profitable? Is it just because it's a region type thing? Is it just because in that area, like Barcelona had the Olympics and stuff like that? Is that really the main reason here? How do we expand and take that wealth to the other parts of Spain so that the rest of Spain isn't as poor and you can actually help maximize it? So in reality, it is, I guess, to your point, it does feel a lot more like an alt-right succession than a, Antifa socialist revolution type thing.
Yeah. Well, in the Washington Post article that we have in our links here, they basically say that there's a variety of people that are in this group, from these anarcho-capitalists to big business interests who are really interested in those types of things. So there's a couple of different layers and levels to it, but they do seem to have all coalesced around the money, around essentially an anti-socialist and anti wealth distribution message, and that's what it really seems to be. So Europe is kind of coming out of this socialist movement or moment that it had. The European Union kind of tried to get all the money together and everybody kind of help and everybody pitch in, and And then we had a bunch of really big problems where things were going really bad in Turkey, and Turkey was trying to get into the European Union, and then people were fighting, saying we don't want to have any more poor countries come in that we'll have to donate all this money to support and fix and help out. And so that altruistic perspective, it definitely destroyed Italy multiple times over. I mean, Greece with all the bankruptcies and all the money issues that, the essentially lending problems that they had on that. It's just, there's a lot of this weird rise of the right because of essentially failed socialist policies and things that were I feel were screwed and destroyed by big business and corporate interests getting into government, as opposed to the altruistic ideals that they were trying to set up with the European Union, one Europe. But unfortunately, this seems to be on the rise across the whole world. It's like this right wing and a nationalist kind of sentiment. And the last time this really kind of nationalist sentiment rose, we saw things like world wars happening. So it's scary, man. People start fighting over these arbitrary borders and stuff like that. We'll see what happens.
Very true. The Washington Post also says this: Europe reaffirmed its position. The EU does not want to get involved, and it defers to Spain. Immediately after the vote for independence, the European Council President Donald Tusk tweeted, "For EU, nothing changes. Spain remains our only interlocutor. I hope the Spanish government favors force of argument, not argument of force." British Prime Minister Theresa May said last week that people should be abiding by the rule of law and uphold the Spanish Constitution. So we'll see, folks. We'll see, where is it going to go? Will they be arrested? It looks like the fight is no longer inside of Catalonia. They're going to have to go back to their salad dressings and donating a large portion of their money to Spain. We're going to take a really quick short break, and when we come back, we'll have more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hey, this is Keith.
And this is Jen, and we're from Not Another Atheist Podcast.
You're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Join the revolution.
Considering how you want to help Cellar Door Skeptics, head over to iTunes or your favorite podcast app and give us a rating, because every rating helps push us in front of new listeners. And since our main goal here at Cellar Door Skeptics is to provide the most accurate information possible, we hope that more ratings will mean that more people get to hear the topics that we're presenting. We don't insist that we get a 5-star rating, but Hannah's favorite number is 5, and the more gold stars he gets, the more special he's gonna feel. So what do you say? Head on over to iTunes or Google Play, give us a rating, and help engage with Cellar Door Skeptics today.
This is Daniel from the Country Fried Free Thought Podcast. I hope you enjoy Cellar Door Skeptics as much as I do, as they help us prepare for the revolution.
Now, back to the show.
I wish people knew that sexual assault is extremely common and that it's a societal problem, not just a personal hardship. Some people can think or say, "I can't believe that happened to her," and talk about it at arm's length, instead of realizing that it affects all of us, directly or indirectly. I wish more people knew how to support one another and talk about it without pushing any stigma, asking the wrong questions, or being uncomfortable. I wish that there was more heightened sensitivity around locker room talk and language that trivializes rape. I also wish that more men understood the lasting impact they can make by integrating respectful verbiage into the daily lives. For example, I've had friends jokingly use the word rapey, as in, don't be rapey, bro. And I think a lot of people don't know yet that using that language can be very upsetting or triggering. Laura McGinnis. With October wrapped up and November coming over the horizon, we wanted a chance to continue the conversation about domestic violence and to help keep it in the forefront of everybody's mind as we continue to fight against it. October was Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but we felt it was still imperative to talk with a domestic abuse survivor about her story. Here is my conversation with Melanie Rice. Mel, we are honored to have you on the show. Welcome to Cellar Door Skeptics. And how are you tonight?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
It's good. It's a little rainy here in Michigan, but we'll call it a day.
Yeah.
It's all that leftover hurricane stuff. Like it decided, hey, we're gonna hold off for 3 weeks, and now we're gonna just dump on you. We've had rain for like 3 days now. It's awful.
Oh well, we've had it for the past 2 days. So yeah, I'm feeling you. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. So doing a little bit of history, I kind of looked into Domestic Violence Awareness Month, DVAM, I guess is the acronym that they use. And It actually evolved from back in the 80s. And I actually did not know this. I thought this was a more recent type thing that had kind of spurred itself over, let's just say, the last 10 years. But it's actually been something that's been kind of going on over, it looks like, the last almost 40 years now.
Right. This year marks the 30th year that Domestic Violence Awareness Month has actually been a whole month. It's year 30.
Year 30. And that's awesome. And that's what's nice about that is, what sucks about it is I didn't know about it for so long. What's nice about it now is that we're able to try and help promote this day because we talk about how can we bring awareness to other things. And sometimes people go, well, why are we talking about this? And we can talk about the Me Too hashtag here in a little bit as well. But it just kind of seems people are like, hey, we're over inundated with all this awareness stuff. And my personality says is, well, hold on a second. If I didn't know about this, why would I not want to know about it? Why are we shaming? I mean, it's not like we're saying, hey, it's gingerbread cookie day or gingerbread cookie month. We're talking about a serious thing that affects lots and lots of people throughout the whole world. And it's not even just isolated to the United States.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I'm exactly with you. I try to do it every day, but I especially focus in October, obviously, because it is Awareness Month. And I think it's because a lot more people bring it to the forefront because it has its own month. I hate that it has to be that way because it seems like the only time it is talked about publicly is in October. I know that just within the past couple of years that I've been paying attention, obviously, from being a survivor, that there are, in the month of October, you see it's in your face, which I think is amazing. If it makes people angry, good. It's going to get people to talk about it. That's what needs to happen. It needs a voice. It needs talked about. I know that there's been commercials on television this month. There's been, I know, Mariska Hargitay, that plays Lieutenant Benson on SVU, has her own organization called the Joyful Heart Foundation. And they do it a couple times a year, but especially this month, they have their No More marathons on USA. I don't know if you get that channel or not, but basically it's just a nonstop all day SUV marathon, and it helps bring awareness. They have commercials within it, and it has, the actors, during commercials will shout out statistics and phone numbers and just different things to kind of bring awareness to national television, which I think is really awesome.
Yeah, and giving it a larger voice is kind of what it is, right? And we did a segment on the show, I don't know, probably about a couple of months ago that kind of talked about types of activism, right? And, there is no right or wrong way. Some people are in your face, some people are not. Sometimes grassroots is good, sometimes extremely structured is good. And the whole point, though, is to bring it to people's attention. And so no matter what's happening, that's what we're doing, right? You're bringing it to people's attention. You're saying, hey, I'm here too. Hey, I'm not the only one, that feels this. Be okay to come out. And if you kind of look back to, the early days of the LGBTQ movement, that's kind of what they were doing too. They're saying, hey, we're normal people. Please stop, abusing us. Please let us come out of the closet. And I think that this is an extremely important topic, even though it is a very hard topic to talk about. Before I could let the interview move too far, I thought it would be important to kind of talk about the Me Too hashtag to see where it had come from.
In all honesty, well, I haven't really sat down and thought about it too much, but I'll give you my opinion on what I think. I think it's a wonderful thing. Again, it brings that awareness. When you opened up Facebook that day that it started, that's all you saw. And if you didn't know what it was about, it wasn't very long until you did. I am very much an advocate for believing the victim. If they say it happened to them, believe them, because that is the worst thing that someone can do, is to not believe a victim, because that's when they choose not to report. One of the most important things that you can do for a victim is to believe them and to tell them that you believe them. So, even if you see someone's Me Too story on there and you're like, no, believe them. It's very important that you believe them. So to me, I think it was a very awesome thing because it brought awareness. It was in your face. And again, like I said, if you didn't know what the hashtag was, you did very shortly after.
With the Me Too hashtag creation by social activist and community organizer Tarina Burke, she created the phase way back in 2006. She wanted to create a campaign as a grassroots movement to promote empowerment through empathy among women of color who have experienced sexual abuse, particularly within underprivileged communities. She created a document entitled Me Too, which she said has inspired to use the hashtag after being unable to respond to a 13-year-old girl who confided in her that she had been sexually assaulted. This type of hashtag, this type of a movement, is something that we support. Sexual assault is real, and we wanted to get Melanie's story out there for everybody to hear, even as painful as it may be. So I continued to talk with Melanie about how she started in activism fighting against domestic spousal abuse.
Well, I got married when I was 19 years old. My parents had gone through a pretty rocky divorce. They, to me at the time, I thought it was the most horrible thing ever because, I didn't really know what divorce was. They were amicable. They were, kind to each other. It wasn't, one of those knockout, drag out kind of divorces. But my mom got remarried, and the day after I turned 18, I moved in with my now ex-husband, very young. I had my first child when I was 19 years old, and subsequently had two more within the 20 years that we were married. It does start out roses. That is one thing that, they always say in an abusive relationship, it does, they win you over. It was very nice. And I'm not saying that, 100% of the time was horrible beatings, because there was in between times that, wasn't. But for 20 years, I stayed in a very manipulative, mentally and physically, financially abusive relationship. And when I say financially, I would say 8 out of 10 times an abuse victim is most of the time doesn't leave because of financial reasons. Well, in my case, it was the complete opposite. I was the one that was working and he was not. I was the one doing all of the laundry. I was cooking all the meals. I was working 60, 70 hours a week. I was taking care of the children and cooking and cleaning and doing everything, paying the bills, grocery shopping. and he was a severe alcoholic, and he still is, I'm pretty sure. But I was stuck in a classic biblical marriage, I guess you could say. He was a preacher's son, a former Pentecostal preacher's son. And of course, back then I was a Christian. Most of the time, I believed that I could pray it away, that there was something that I could do to pray it away. I would walk on eggshells everywhere. There were times where, I would come straight in the door, the house would be a mess, and I would say anything to him about cleaning it up, and it would start a fight. So a lot of times I would just avoid that so I didn't have to deal with it, and then just do it all myself. From mowing the grass to taking the kids to activities, everything I did. I remember specific one time I was running late from bringing my daughter home from a cheer practice, and I called him and asked him if he could put the chicken in the oven, and he told me he didn't even know how to turn the oven on. So, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I was waiting for that. That's why. Yeah. So, I mean, I know, when you're in that situation, you kind of just do whatever just to keep the peace. It was, like I said, it was an emotionally and verbally and physical violent situation. He wasn't very loyal. There was several occasions where he did cheat. And of course, in the Bible, it says that you are not to get a divorce from your husband unless he grants it. So I stayed and I stayed and I stayed and I just prayed about it. I mean, I remember even got a book, and it was Stormy O. Martin. I remember even the name of the author. It was called Stormy O. Martin, The Power of a Praying Wife. And I read that sucker from front to back, and it did everything that it said. But I was always the one, he would deflect his problems onto me. So everything was my fault. If I was woke up in the middle of the night because he found a hair in the bathtub, and I would be grilled for hours in the middle of the night because he had found a hair in the bathtub that he didn't think belonged to anybody in our house. He would wake me up in the middle of the night and grill me for hours because the hamper lid was up. He would sit outside my work and to look to see who I was walking out with at closing time. One evening in particular, he had suspected that I was seeing someone that I had worked with. Of course, I was not. And he said that he watched me from outside walk out with this person. I knew who I walked out with, which is, one of the older ladies that worked there. She was like 90 years old. And I don't know how he couldn't have told the difference, but yeah.
He was too drunk.
So maybe, yeah, probably. So, we got home, and the first thing he did was, I was questioned, and I just kept pushing back. No, it was this person that I walked out with. I don't know. I was standing right there and I saw everything. And I was probably 2 months pregnant at the time. And, we were standing in the hallway, and he just kept going and going. And I said, I wasn't doing anything. I didn't do anything. And the next thing I know, his hand comes up and across my face, and blood everywhere. I was wearing glasses, so I ended up with 2 black eyes. And within 24 hours, I started miscarrying and ended up with a miscarriage that weekend.
Jeez.
Yeah. And that's a terrifying thing for someone that is in an abusive relationship. In my case, I can speak for myself that, you go into a hospital because you're miscarrying, and you feel like on purpose they, I have 2 black eyes when I go into the hospital. And I go into the hospital alone because he didn't go with me. And they put me in the room that had the domestic violence posters everywhere. Are you being hurt at home? All of the pictures in the doctor's offices that they have. And I'm sitting there thinking, I can tell someone right now, but I could never bring myself to actually do it, because I always thought, where would we go? What would we do? At the time I only had 2 of my 3 children, but, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So then, when my son was born, it seemed to during the last 10 years seemed to have gotten 100 times worse. He couldn't even wake up for the day without it being something wrong. He would literally wake up noonish, 1 o'clock, come downstairs, and if the dog came to greet him, he would start screaming and yelling because he felt nobody fed the dog yet. That was why the dog came to greet him. He would snap at every little thing. I remember one instance where he was looking for a cell phone charger, and he had picked one up off the floor near the outlet where he had his, and one of the dogs had chewed on the end of the cord, and he flipped out. I mean, took it and threw it against the wall, knocked all of my pictures down off the wall. I had a piece of shelving there. It came down. Everything was breaking everywhere. And he started screaming that one of the kids, my oldest daughter, he was like, I know that she did this. I know that she broke this. She broke this. And of course, I'm mama bear, so I take up for every one of them, and I'll stand in their place. And I said, no, maybe it was me. I don't know. I'm trying to, make these excuses. And he said, no. It had to have been her. And I was like, no. He was like, no, we'll go see. So he grabs me by my hair, and he drags me through the kitchen and upstairs into my daughter's bedroom and just starts screaming at her in the bedroom about a cell phone charger, of all things. So when that was over, he comes back downstairs and finds that wasn't even his cell phone charger. His was in the outlet.
Jeez. Is that when you feel the tipping point was? Do you feel that specific instance is what kind of tipped the scales towards moving you to leave the relationship?
Unfortunately, no. I think what did that was I worked in retail. Of course, I still do, but a different company. And the people that I worked with, two of which were very, very close to me. One was my boss and one was a coworker. And I had been friends with these two people for 15 years. And one of them was my best friend. Of course, he still didn't know. Nobody knew. My parents didn't even know. So he had made the joke to me one day about, I can't even remember exactly what the joke was about cheating or, something like that. Or going out with friends. And I said, no, I wouldn't be able to do that. I said, I would literally be killed if I did something like that. And, I passed it off as a joke. And he looked at me and he said, you can't be serious. And I said, well, I guess maybe this is my out to tell somebody. So I said, yeah, actually, that's probably what would happen. And he had told me that he had suspected for a while, but he didn't know how to broach the subject. And from then out, he kind of, kept an eye on me. And he said, you can tell by the way your demeanor changes and your voice changes when he calls you on the phone. You can tell right away that that's who's calling you, how you act around him. You're a totally different person. And one evening, before I had come to work, I worked night shift, and I was trying to leave, and we had gotten into a fight, and he had me down in the front doorway of our house and was choking me. And I look up, and we had an old farmhouse where the stair steps went up, but the landing was right above the front door. And I look down, and my daughter's looking down on us. So I look up, and he sees me look up and sees that she's there. So he stops, and he turns around and walks away. So I get up, and I run out the front door and go straight into work. And I have, marks on my neck from being choked, but, I've always had long hair, so it kind of covered it. And I was really quiet going in, and my other coworker, she had come up from behind, and she put her hand on my back, and she said, "Are you okay?" And I thought, "No, I'm not." And I told her, "No, I'm not." And I just started crying. I just lost it. And that's the first time I'd ever broke down in front of anybody about that. And she just put her arm around me and she said, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And I would say within the month, that was the tipping point, because within the month I was trying, racking my brain on little things, what can I do to leave this situation? I was thinking, well, maybe is it so bad for me to want him to cheat on me so I have a reason to go? I'm looking for reasons, not just to go at all, but looking for reasons. So then the night that, the last time the night that we left, we were in the process of moving into a new home, the one that we are actually in right now. And I was at work all day and had come home, and he was playing a video game, drinking. And he had wanted to know if I'd called to have the internet and the cable switched over yet. And I said, no, I haven't had a chance. And he got mad. So I said, I'll just do it right now. I'll do it. And I'll run to the other house. I had to get the cable boxes and the internet boxes. And mind you, it was probably a 10-minute drive to my other house to get this stuff. And on the way back, he called and he said, on your way back, can you pick me up a pack of cigarettes? Well, where we live now, we live less than a block from a convenience store. So I made the mistake of telling him, why don't you get up and walk? I'm really tired. Mm-hmm. He didn't like that very well. So when I got home, I went straight upstairs, because a lot of times what I do is, I would jump in the bathtub and take a hot bath, be in there for maybe half an hour, 45 minutes. And by the time I got done, it had diffused the situation. So pretty much the fight was over. Didn't work that night. So when I had gotten out of the bathtub, the kids were already asleep, and, they were already in bed. I know they weren't asleep. And, so I decided I was going to go in my room and lay down, because I just wanted to stay completely away from him. It's just much easier just to stay away from him. If he stays downstairs and stays away from me, we're good. Well, he decided to come upstairs, and that was his thing, where he would sit on the edge of the bed and he would badger me, and he would question me about things that didn't even make sense, and just try to keep me awake. He would try to, because that's how you brainwash someone, is you lack of sleep. If they're tired, they're going, the gaslighting sets in quicker. So I kept telling him, please just leave me alone. I just want to sleep. Just please leave me alone. No, I don't have to. No, I don't have to. So I laid there and he kept going. And finally I got up and I walked across the room, and actually in the room I'm in right now. And I walked into the hallway and I turned around and I looked at him one last time and I said, please just leave me alone. And he brought his hand up on the side of my head and everything went blank. There was ringing and this voice, and I'm a skeptic, so I know that it wasn't any kind of angel voice or anything like that, but it was maybe my subconscious saying, now, this is your chance now. So I grabbed all three of my kids and was like, come on, we're going. I mean, I had, everybody was in their pajamas. I don't think we even had shoes, and we scurried to the car. So my ex followed us and he blocked the door so that I couldn't get in, and just was just yelling at the kids, well, I guess I'm the bad guy now. I guess, I'm father of the year now. I guess I'm a bad dad. And finally my oldest daughter looked at him and said, Dad, please just let us go. And he was like, fine. And he walked away. So we drove off and I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I had 3 kids. There was no way that I could make it by myself on 3 kids, which of course, yeah, I could. I was the only one making money and I was supporting him too. I mean, that's just, if I would have been thinking clearly. But so we drove to a hotel and we sat in the parking lot. Of course, my kids, I'm trying to calm them down. And I was like, I can spend $60 here tonight, or I can go back, because I don't know when I'm going to need that $60. So I called my mom, and she is a disabled person worker. She helps disabled people, and she was at a client's house. And she said, you come to me and you get my keys and you go straight to my house, her 1-bedroom apartment with my 3 children and myself, which, my ex said, there's no way you could ever go there. She doesn't have room for you. She doesn't want you. And she had called the police and called my cousin to meet me there. And the next morning I went and got a protective order, and that was it. That was the very last time he ever laid a hand on me. So, yay!
Yeah, that's good. That's good, right?
Yeah.
After talking with Mel about her story, I felt it was imperative that we talk about what can you do if you find others in a similar situation? Or what can you do if you are inside of a similar situation she found herself in? I thought it would be a good idea to talk with her about her opinions on what you can do.
Actually, just a couple of nights ago, I had to have this conversation with my ex's new girlfriend. She had called me close to 1 a.m. because her and my ex had gotten into a fight, and he had taken her phone and knocked her down and knocked her into walls, and my son was there. So she was trying to get a hold of me to come so she could get my son out. And that was last Tuesday. So, I told her, I said, listen, do you need me to take you anywhere? Do you want me to take you anywhere? When you sneak him out, sneak yourself out too. I can take you wherever you need to go. And she said, no, he's gone now. I think everything will be okay. And I said, well, listen, if you need anything at all, just message me, call me, whatever you have to do. I said, because he will not stop. They don't stop. They don't. It's a power situation. They need to have that power. They need to feel like they have that property. It's very important not to scare them off. In my case, if I would have been found out before I came clean to someone, I would have been terrified, because if someone would have called the cops without me knowing it, and the cops would have shown up at my house and nothing would have come of it, and the cops would have left, I'd have been in serious trouble after them cops left.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I always think of that. If it's someone that I know personally, I think that I would take them aside and say, listen, I know what's going on. I've been there. If you want to talk to me, I'm here to listen. I will not judge you. I believe you, because those two things are probably the most important, because if you're not careful, one of the first things that comes out of people's mouths is, oh, it's so easy to leave. Why don't you just get up and leave? It's not that easy. And if you say that to someone, it can kind of backfire. It's important to just be patient with them, because like you said, if they're not ready to leave, they won't. I would say, to someone that's seeing that situation, keep an eye on them. If you feel like he or she is in absolute danger, obviously call 911. That's very important. You can deal with the rest of that stuff later. At least that person is safe. If you think that it's actually come down to physical violence that day, call hotline numbers. It's very easy to, I gave you some numbers.
Yep.
They're very easy to find. Call hotline numbers and say, listen, I feel like this person might be being abused. What can I do? They will give you excellent information. There are amazing apps that you can give to someone that you think is being abused. It looks like a news app, like a weather app. And if you feel like you're in danger, all you have to do is push a button on the screen of your phone, and it automatically dials into 911. They need to know that they do have the support outside of that, because they're conditioned to believe that they don't. So if they know that there's someone there to help them when they do leave, they're going to be more likely to leave.
And that's very important. And I think there's, in Michigan, we have a center called Women in Transition, and they're not specifically religious, but they definitely are probably run by a lot of religious people.
Yeah.
But they've done a lot for our community around here, to help get the awareness out, to say, hey, here's a safe place. You can come here. Let me get you some resources, and different things like that. And I think that's really important. one of the last things I kind of wanted to talk to you about is I came across an article on NPR. Surprising, yes, I would listen to NPR all the time, but they had this little segment called "Iowa Tries a New Domestic Violence Intervention Called Mindfulness," and the article actually kind of talks about a YMCA inside of Iowa that talks about how they're working with people who are abusers, who have gone through the system and who are coming out of the system, and how they can work with them to try and rehabilitate them so that these things don't happen again. And so I know this is a very sensitive issue, but, we do have people that, if we're not going to lock them away, are going to come back in public. What do you feel is a good situation or things that we can do to help them either reacculate to society or help make others aware of this type of an individual?
Oh, that's a good question. I know that my abuser took batterers intervention classes. He did take those classes as well. And it did not help him. I think the only reason he did it was to look better in court. The funny thing about it was the guy that he always accused me of cheating on him with. His brother was the one teaching his classes. So small world that was, but which, I thought was kind of funny. But I think that in my situation, he didn't change. And of course, I can't speak for every single abuser that's out there. But in my personal opinion, I don't think that they do change. There's a reason why. I honestly believe that if you're an offender, you're always going to be an offender. And I don't know that making someone hold ice to feel the pain and the numbness is going to help if you don't have empathy anyway. They are angry people. I know that in my ex-husband's case, I know that he was bipolar. He had never had gotten treatment for it. So I believe that had a lot to do with the way that he treated me and the kids. He was fine one minute and then, not fine another minute, and was never treated for it, which is unfortunate because, he might even to this day be a different person. But the majority of the time it's about power. It's about property. I just don't think that it would help.
And I think you're right. I think that's a touchy subject. That's a lot of what a lot of people, are struggling with. And there's a lot of people where, even if you look inside of different movements right now, people are saying, hey, why are we working on this? Why aren't we working towards a solution? When we talk about racism and we talk about this whole white supremacy type thing coming up, people want to argue about free speech, and we're saying, people are getting sick of it. We're no longer going to tolerate this. We're no longer going to tolerate you wanting to have your free speech specifically to shout hate speech, or to allow someone else to shout hate speech, And so I think you make a good point that we're kind of at this crossroads. What do we do?
Exactly, because Trump's not helping because, one of the first things that he was going to cut was when Obama was in office, he had created the Violence Against Women Act, which was amazing because it gave federal dollars to places that, like the family crisis centers, the place that helped me. I would not be here if it weren't for those people. They helped me more than, the support of my family was amazing, but those people know what they're doing. They, help you get legal advice. They answer every single question. They walk with you step by step through paperwork, protective orders, stuff that, you're overwhelmed and you're terrified when you get out of situations like that and you don't know the first thing to do. And those people, volunteer people, come in and they step in and they help you. And that funding goes to those places because these places they're like non-for-profit. They get grants and they get, the federal funding through the Violence Against Women Act. But, that was one of the first things that Trump wanted to cut, which, made sense with him. But, it's just baffling. I don't know. I just don't know.
So thank you, Mel, for joining us tonight. It was a very wonderful conversation. Thank you very much, Mel, for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And that wraps up our interview with Mel Rice. We'll be right back talking about the economics of consent with Stephanie from Almost Diamonds blog.
Hey, what's up? I'm Steve Hayes.
And I'm Dave Curry.
And we're from Profitcast.
And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
On the Fox News Network.
They're not affiliated with Fox.
Everyone's a Fox affiliate.
If you'd like to join the ranks of Patreons and sponsor the show, head over to patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics. For less than a 20-ounce soda or an energy drink each week, you can help sponsor us, the hosts, and our charity of choice. Patreon helps Cellar Door Skeptics create better content, become better activists, and it's going to help you stay healthier by drinking one less soda or one less energy drink each week. Click the link in the notes of the show to sponsor us today because we bring the discussion with the sources.
This is Matthew the Apostle from In the Name of God, the podcast. And you are listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Now, back to the show.
I thought of something my mother told me when I was a little girl, said Britt Marling. She said this: to be a free woman, you have to be a financially independent woman. She wasn't wrong. I studied economics in college and went to New York to become an investment banker. To be blunt, I wanted the freedom money can buy. This segment, the closing segment of our show tonight, is a little bit heavier of a topic. We're going to be talking about Harvey Weinstein and the economics of consent, an article that was on The Atlantic written by Britt Marling. And we wanted to kind of talk about this because earlier we talked about the domestic violence, and we talked about Domestic Violence Awareness Month and a little bit about the Me Too hashtag. And what I really wanted to do is bring on a guest, bring on Stephanie from The Orbit. She has a blog that she writes called Almost Diamonds. She also is an active participant on the Minnesota Atheist and on their podcast, Atheist Talk. And so I wanted to kind of bring her on to get a perspective and hear her thoughts on this specific piece. Because to me, when we talk about domestic violence, we can stop it. We can bring awareness. We can help people get out of domestic violence situation, right? But that still doesn't change the economic side of it. It still doesn't change what do you do when you're done? How much can you help? And what happens if the scale is actually tipped in the wrong direction? So please welcome to Cellar Door Skeptics, Stephanie. How are you tonight, ma'am?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. It's good night, right?
I want to hear you try to say her last name. Come on. I know there's a couple of letters in there. Let's hear it.
Zvan.
Stephanie, just there we go. Okay, you said it right. That's just a background.
Actually, it's Zvan.
Stephanie.
Zvan.
It is. Nobody ever said. The thing is, there is many recordings out there of people saying it wrong is right. So even if you do everything you think you can, except ask me, to find out how it's pronounced, chances are good you're still going to get it wrong.
See, and he knows I can't pronounce names. He knows that. That's why he called me out on that.
That's why I was trying to bring that in. To take Stephanie background is we had a segment earlier on Catalonia's their nationalism and the secession they had, and he called them cantinas and cantalinas and all that. So like I thought for sure that he was going to give a shot to your last name. So that's awesome. Okay, so welcome Stephanie Zvan. And so let's dive into it.
Yeah, so as we begin, Stephanie, so I gave you a couple of days. I sent you the article to get kind of your thoughts on this article and kind of on the state of, the economics of America, right? And I thought, after reading through some of your blog pieces and seeing some of the stuff you post on Facebook, I really thought you would be a good contribution to this, to this part of our show. And I don't want, people listening to go, well, hold on a second. Here we are, talking about this, and none of us work in Hollywood, and maybe you do, I guess, and I just don't know, but I don't work in Hollywood, so.
I don't. You're safe.
Okay, good. So, you were on Scientific America, but I don't think we've escalated to Hollywood. But I kind of want to help take this article and relate it to everyday lives. And that's why I really wanted to bring you on, is to have you help us. How can we relate this type of an article and the things that are said about this article to the everyday individual and help others understand, so that they don't just kind of look at this as this piece that says, well, hey, that's just Hollywood. Because I don't feel that this is just Hollywood. I feel this is a large national problem, and it's probably honestly even a worldwide problem in the majority of the world.
And you're absolutely right about that. The thing about Hollywood that makes it particularly susceptible to this, there are a couple of other things as well, but the big thing that makes it particularly susceptible to this is that movie making, and more so as you go up the chain, is a male-dominated profession. It is a male-dominated profession that women are entering, that women are getting more power in, that women are really starting to carve out some of their own spaces in. But it's still a male-dominated profession, and we know that harassment is pretty well rampant in those. And we know that also, as women enter those male-dominated spaces, they face more harassment than women do in more equal professions, or professions that are tilted more toward women.
Yeah. And the one thing that we're not going to spend time doing tonight, and we've done this on other shows, is we're not going to sit here and try and justify the numbers, because I've had a lot of people that will send us emails and they'll be like, well, are you really sure? Let me disprove this wage gap thing. And I don't, we're going to believe that this is true, and I don't want to have to get into that side of it, because I think that takes away from this conversation. The interesting part about this article too is, the individual who wrote this, she was in investment banking. She was in a different profession and then chose to kind of go into show business as a way to change up and do something she liked. And what's interesting here is that she talks about, an encounter that she had. And, Stephanie, I don't know if you can speak from personal experience on this, but, how does it make somebody feel when they get stuck in an encounter where they feel like, A, they don't have the upper hand, and B, they don't know how to escape?
I mean, the big thing that it does is make you feel helpless, and it doesn't matter really how competent an individual you are in anything else. She's a screenwriter, was an actress at the time. It doesn't matter how good she was at either of those. Neither of those was going to really give her the skills to, and not just to leave, because that's what she ended up doing when Weinstein tried to come onto her, but to make that situation turn back into a regular business meeting, because that's what she ultimately wanted. But none of her skills were going to help her with that. And so she felt helpless, and it's not too surprising. Everything about that situation was engineered for her to feel helpless.
Do you feel that that's something that not only specifically comes, just to that industry, but in industries where men have dominated the higher side of the pay scale, the more authoritarian positions? Do you feel that happens in the majority of industries?
From the reports we have, it certainly seems to. There's been a lot of attention paid to women in science and technology. Again, very competent people, very highly skilled. But they talk about running into harassment and feeling helpless and being made helpless, not just by the people who are harassing them, but also by the people who are supposed to take care of that when they report it.
Yeah. And that's this article brings a lot of that to life. Inside of the article, they actually talk about, and I guess I'll be honest, and maybe this is a position of privilege that I've had, that I've never had to think about this, but women couldn't have credit cards in their own name until 43 years ago. That just sounds insane to me. Like, I don't even understand the mentality behind that, because I don't understand how anybody would think that that's a valid process to live life.
Yeah, all of that is very well documented. Women couldn't buy houses on their own. There were a number of things that they couldn't do without their husband's permission, financial decisions, health decisions. all that kind of stuff. So that really started changing in the 70s. In terms of the legal ability to give and withhold consent within marriage, there were states that didn't have a marital rape law on the books until the early 90s. So this has happened largely in our lifetimes.
That's crazy, you know. I mean, that's just I don't know. I mean, and it's kind of funny because, you know, sitting with my parents, some of these topics never come up, but you know, my dad votes very conservative. You know, a lot of my family voted very conservative, and then you know, now with me being a lot more liberal than they are, some of these topics come up, and you know, he just doesn't see that, and you just kind of go, well, look, you're 60 years old. Shouldn't you be going back and doing research? How are you this settled into life that you can't even understand that other people struggle just because you don't? And why don't you see that you had some privilege? Just because you grew up poor doesn't mean you still haven't had advantages and privileges that a lot of other people haven't.
Yeah, I mean, you know, even people who grew up poor in that, men who grew up poor in that situation, more or less owned their wives. Mm-hmm. It wasn't necessarily, some of it was enshrined in law, but just the fact that women needed their husbands and needed their husbands' permission to do all those things. They could do pretty much anything they wanted to and get away with it because women didn't have another choice.
Yeah.
And I mean, I say that they didn't have good choices. Women have always worked around these systems and carved things out and found ways to be more independent than that, but it's always come at a high price.
Well, talking about that momentum and moving things forward, I'm kind of optimistic in this. The most recent events that have been happening, we've seen the Weinstein stuff turn into almost a nationwide movement where we're seeing, you know, big names, big people in different industries. That, like yesterday, the NPR head of news, the news executive, was basically, after a few days of all these things coming out, was either fired or forced to resign because of a New York Times or New York Post or a Washington Post article that came out basically explaining things that had been going on in their past, and then people at NPR said stuff. Basically, are you optimistic to think that maybe, like you said, with women were finding their ways through and creating momentum? Do you think this is going to be, this big Weinstein thing is going to be I guess a starting point for like a change, a long-term change that will actually stick to the rest of the country and everything on these kinds of topics?
Yes and no. I think we will see progress that comes out of this. But we haven't really started to see much of these accused men filing their lawsuits and shutting up their accusers. So far, the only lawsuit I know of is Brent Ratner, director, producer, suing one of the women who accused him of rape. At the same time, the LA Times has heard from dozens more women about things he's done to them that they're investigating. But, we get pushback like that. We have been honestly working on this quite a bit as a society over the last probably about a decade. And the election of Trump is in some ways a reaction to that. There are people who feel that, if they can't have these privileges, then suddenly they're oppressed, because apparently harassing women is a right. But and they are willing to do what they're doing to this country in order to try to stop it or to push it backwards, that kind of thing. So I'm hopeful. I see good forward movement, but I don't think, if there were one thing that could push this forward and solve this problem, honestly, it probably would have happened when Anita Hill testified in front of Congress. But instead, we've still got him on the Supreme Court. So
Yeah. And that's kind of funny too. I guess it's not funny. I'll be honest, it's not funny, but there was a tweet that went around, right? And this lady said, "Hey, you look at how fast Kevin Spacey lost a multi-million-dollar contract and how fast that show disappeared when he was accused by another man. But yet our president is still in office. Even Harvey Weinstein hasn't been actually prosecuted. There isn't large investigations. He's not in jail right now. And to me, that almost kind of feels, if you look at that, what does that still show? There's still symptoms inside of our society that show that when a man accuses a woman, there is a distrust there. And it's just, to me, it's a disgusting revelation that, now all of a sudden, people are having to face this and they're rejecting it. That's disgusting to me. Why do people have to reject this when we should just be like, hey, if he's an abuser, let's go after him. Why is there any questions about this?
Yeah, I will caution that the Spacey situation is a little more complicated than that. It's come out recently that he had already been warned and spoken to for something that happened on set some years ago. And also, he's gay. We seem to have a much easier time holding people who are marginalized in some way or another responsible for their actions. So I don't know that it's really about listening to women, because we don't have the best history of listening to gay men either. So
yeah, and that's a very fair point. One of the portions of the article, when you get about halfway through, she talks about this. She says the things that happen in the hotel room and boardrooms all over the world and in the industry between women seeking employment or trying to keep employment and men holding the power to grant it or take it away exist in a gray zone where words like consent don't fully capture the complexity of the encounter, because consent is a function of power. So Stephanie, tell us a little bit, or, what is your thoughts, A, on that statement, and B, on the fact that it almost kind of feels like the power struggle has to do with the consent struggle, and that everything just seems to be tied all the way back to the economics of how our society works.
This is true. This has been a major topic in feminism for decades now, to the point where it gets strawmanned by anti-feminists who are saying women feminists claim that all sex is rape, and nobody's actually claiming that. But we've been talking about the fact that it is hard to meaningfully consent when your options for withholding consent are limited, are constrained, come with really unacceptable consequences. So she had a nice point in there. I don't remember who she was quoting, but she was talking to somebody, I think, who had otherwise not really impressed her as a male feminist, but who, basically said, if somebody has less power than you, if they're a woman, it is your responsibility to ask, get a clear answer. If they are somebody who is a woman and then also otherwise marginalized, ask twice. Mm-hmm. So basically talking about the fact that when you have power relative to somebody else, when you can make their life miserable, untenable, when you hold their career or other kinds of advancements or their social prospects, all of that stuff, when you have the kind of power that is granted by male privilege, however that plays out in your life, it's worth remembering that, and it's worth remembering that you probably should be at least as cautious as you are powerful. Because otherwise, how do you really know? How do you know that somebody didn't decide that you were the least terrible option? Because for the most part, people don't really want that. Mm-hmm. I don't want that. I don't think either of you guys want that, judging by the looks on your faces at the moment.
No.
But it can be a hard thing to analyze.
Do you feel that would be a good step in the right direction to helping stop some of the sexual harassment then?
I think that it would be a good step in the right direction towards stopping some of the things, particularly that women experience as sexual harassment. I don't think it is something that is going to stop repeat harassers in any way, because they are not people who don't know this. Weinstein knew what he was doing. There is no way that with a pattern of behavior like that involved lying to people, that involved inviting them to events that turned into different kinds of events, that involved isolating women, that involved offering them career advancement or subtly threatening their careers. There is no way he didn't know what he was doing. So stopping and thinking isn't going to stop somebody like him.
So is that why the Me Too hashtag campaign is important? Is that why people starting to call him out and actually seeing the industry start to take action against these things? Is that important? Because we need to get rid of some of these higher level individuals who are repeated offenders.
Absolutely. The more of them that we can get rid of, the better off, honestly, everybody is. The less people really need to be. One of the things that happens when we talk about harassment is people who recognize that they have that power, who don't want to abuse it, get paranoid about their own behavior. And that's not a terrible thing, but it's one more burden that it would be nice to be able to dial that back to simple thoughtfulness. So if we get rid of the people who are the major threat, everybody gets to relax a bit. And things get more even, get more equal. Because the number of people Weinstein chased out of the business is just kind of astounding. And they were, for the most part, women. There were probably some of them who identified as genderqueer, and I don't want to, just automatically rule them out by talking about women. But he, by and large, contributed to this inequality that he was profiting from.
On a major scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about some of the efforts that I've seen some of these efforts that to try to get like a positive message, like a rhyme thing or something like that. You help try to remember all the names of the planets or something. So like I've seen this tweet going around quite often. It's basically treat anyone that you're dealing with, anyone that has less power than you, like you would treat Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So like that whole idea of that this person could utterly destroy you. Do you think that kind of like making it kind of like a humorous thing in increasing the message spread and the awareness with stuff like that is a good direction to take it, or do you think it's a little bit I guess demeaning or kind of taking us back into that same masculine type of way that we seem to have been spiraling in the past?
There are things that I like about it. It really does highlight the fact that people know what they're doing, that this is rooted in sexism. Because if they were dealing with a guy and they were dealing with somebody who had power relative to them, the point of that article about The Rock was, this stuff is really obvious.
Yeah.
You actually know how to behave if you think about the fact that this is a person and not a woman.
Yeah.
They are a woman. That doesn't make them not a person. So I like that aspect of it. There are things about saying, treat women like men instead of treat women like people that cause the problems, but it's not a bad first step. If you're if you're really
baby steps
coming at this from any kind of remotely confused position, it's a decent way of thinking about it. Hopefully people will move beyond that once they get the basics.
Yeah. And it's some of, talking about how do we change some of that, the article talks about hiring more women of color, and helping to fix that economic, disparity that we kind of see. One of the other things, that it talks about is stopping supporting culture that promotes sexual abuse or harassment. For example, there's a lot of, discussion about free speech, right, in the comedy movement, right? And a lot of people are like, well, I should be able to say whatever I want because it's funny. And it's kind of, on my side, on a personal story, I was always a big Dave Chappelle fan, huge Dave Chappelle fan back in the day. Watched his 2 new comedy specials. I don't like any of his stuff. I can't stand him now.
Yeah.
I mean, every 50% of his stand-up turned into abusing trans individuals and women. And it's just kind of like, this is no longer funny. Like maybe I've just changed, but to me, it kind of almost seems as if we stop supporting some of that, maybe some of it will go away because it'll become more of a anomaly rather than a mainstream idea.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like you need that to be funny. Chappelle's bit about Prince is still probably one of the funniest things that he's done. It doesn't rely on that at all. Next week at Skepticon, I get to see Leanne Lord perform. I am hoping I will get a chance to sit down and talk to her about doing comedy that doesn't rely on basically being a terrible person, because she's really good at it. So it's not something we need to be funny, or, anybody who's actually funny needs to have in order to be funny. So I don't find the people who say it is necessary terribly convincing. Or the people who claim, no, really, I'm funny. That's not a good look. No. If you have to be telling me you're funny, you're probably not.
No, really, I am funny. I really am. Yeah, one of those things that you have to when you have to tell someone, it usually changes a little bit. I basically the argument that with the comedy thing is a lot of things we talk about when it's the absolutist for freedom of speech, and we start hearing things like, if society all behaved ethically, it would kind of marginalize and drive out people, the bad actors or whatever. And my thoughts are basically that sometimes you need a little bit of something to help push that. So because humans are naturally impulsive creatures, and so we would love to think that the society works in this utopian way where we'll eventually weed out all of the bad stuff. But as we've seen with things like fascism and Nazism, those things kind of come back. And when you do give a platform, when you give a comedian like Dave Chappelle a huge platform where he's basically saying those things, it can kind of reinforce it. And so then you're no longer thinking about The Rock. You're thinking that it's okay to say those kinds of things just because it's funny. I'm basically just agreeing with you on that. But I have changed over the years, and especially with hanging out with Chris, because he's been in this a lot more than I have over the years. And it's really cool to see this change in myself, but also to kind of be aware. And I love that. And I hope that this whole thing is basically my optimism again, is that talking about these things and seeing these things more on social media, it will get people who are kind of like me, who didn't really have any thoughts like that in the future or in the past, and now think about anything you say in the future. And that's kind of really the only goal, is to just add a little bit of a self filter. At least I would think that would be a good place to start.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a woman, so I've always been accountable for what I have to say. I've always had to have filters in place.
Yeah.
So as we wrap this segment up, Stephanie, tell us, or tell the audience, I guess, what's some of the best next steps, and kind of what are some of the things that a lot of people can do to help try and A, discourage this type of behavior among others, and B, to help try and create a more economic equality that everybody can enjoy.
I think one of the big things that we need to do, particularly as this is working through the entertainment industry, as it continues to work through the atheist and skeptic movements, is realize that, we don't have a shortage of talented people. Sure, some of the people who are problems now or are creating problems for other people, I guess is a better way of putting that, now are people who probably got you through some tough times in your life. You're not the only person who really loved Chappelle. There are plenty of, unfortunately, atheist and skeptic icons who have fallen short.
That's funny, because I wouldn't say they've just fallen short. Some of them have gone off the deep end.
There is that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm good with that. But it's not like they're the only people out there. It's not like there aren't lots of really brilliant people doing brilliant work along these lines. And yeah, it hurts to realize, to look at some of your heroes and understand that they're not heroes in any way. But it's also an opportunity to find new people, to find people who will continue to challenge you, who will continue to help you think about your own life, make your own life better. And, there's more to this than loss. We're not just giving something up. We're actually building a better world. And that's painful. It's painful, like giving up religion was painful. But I don't think there are a whole lot of people who really want to go back. So let's just keep moving forward.
I would agree with that. Thank you again, Stephanie, for joining us tonight. Your perspective is always warranted, and we are very happy to be able to have it on our show.
I am so glad to be on.
So thank you very much. That is our show this week. Thank you all for joining us on our journey. Sometimes these topics are not the easiest topics to discuss, but we feel it is necessary to talk about domestic violence and sexual harassment and the inequality of economics between men and women. We are hoping we sparked some interest in you to continue the cause and keep the conversation going. If you know someone who feels unsafe or are unsafe yourself, please share the links in the description or call 1-800-799-SAFE. Next week, we're going to be back with the conclusion to Hannah's science segment, CRISPR, and we're also going to talk to a friend of mine about what it's like to be an atheist but living with your Christian spouse. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. And until next week, stay classy. Have a good night, everyone.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker, cellardoorskeptics.com.